Tony Hawk's Underground 2, aka Thug 2, is now 20 years old, so it's time I celebrate it with this video. And no, this will not be as long as my epic Thug 1 review that I posted last year, but still, let me give you a quick recap of that video. As a child, I didn't really click with the Tony Hawk games until the 5th entry, Underground. It blew 12-year-old me's mind. The game was a masterpiece, so of course I couldn't wait for Underground 2. Also, there's an entire chapter in my Thug 1 review dedicated to Bam Margera. I explained how playing Thug 1 made me an avid fan of Bam simply due to his wild nature and finally realizing that he was one of the Jackass crew. Well, imagine my happiness back then when I discovered that he was pretty much the star of the next Tony Hawk game, and it would essentially be a Jackass video game. I just needed Tony Hawk's Underground 2. I couldn't contain my excitement. It was a long, grueling wait. Well, the game finally came out.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
I got home, put the disc in, and the game blew my mind. I literally beat it in one play session. I stayed up all night until the sun rose. I loved it. Of course, Underground 2 didn't bring much new to the table, and its story mode was pretty short, but I didn't care. The game was exactly what I wanted. The same phenomenal trick system, but with a new, crazy outer shell. It was fantastic. But how do I feel about it now, 20 years later? Well, at the end of my Underground 1 review last year, I said this. Now, is Tony Hawk's Underground the best Tony Hawk game? For me, it's a contest between Underground 1 or 2. Sure, Underground 2 isn't as much about skateboarding as Underground 1, and Underground 1 definitely did innovate a lot more as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know, Underground 2 has aged a lot better in my opinion, but I don't know, I'll probably come to that conclusion when I review Tony Hawk's Underground 2 next year when it turns 20. The reason why I thought Underground 2 had aged better than Underground 1 was simply because 1 had some horrible vehicles, and the serious plot points sometimes felt out of place with the silly gameplay. Time has not been kind to those flaws, but Underground 2 fixed those flaws by improving the vehicles and making the plot entirely silly, fitting with the gameplay. Combining that with the fact that I hadn't played Underground 2 for like over a decade, I really couldn't tell you in that last video which Tony Hawk game I preferred. As a result, one of my main goals whilst making this video was to finally decide which Tony Hawk game was my favorite. Well, I've replayed the game and I now know Underground 2 has aged well, but I see more weaknesses than I used to. A lot more actually. Underground 1 is obviously the better game in my eyes. Let's get into it. So the story mode. Set after the events of Thug 1, Tony Hawk and Bam Margera embark on a
World Destruction Tour, around the world's sick as hell skating competition that Tony and I threw together and you Jagoffs are gonna compete in.
The tour is split into 2 teams, Tony's team and Bam's team. You're automatically put on Tony's team, so now you have to tour the world, cause mayhem, and earn points to beat Bam's team. As an avid fan of Bam, it did piss me off that you can't pick his team, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, during the Berlin level, you actually do switch to Bam's team, and it doesn't make a lick of difference, so who cares? Now, what you need to know about the story is that it really is a poor continuation of Thug 1's story. That game had some serious moments, but Thug 2, it's like a cartoon. And you are still playing as the same creatable character from Thug 1, but now they don't have much of an arc at all, and they barely get a line of dialogue.
Do you have any final words?
Well, I guess I'd just like to say...
Like, Bam wanted to sign you after you won an amateur competition straight away, but now that you're a proven pro, he picks a crippled kid in a wheelchair over you?
Are you serious? You can't decide between me and a kid in a body cast?
You want some of me? Oh, bring it on, bitch!
I like that. He's fired up. This kid's got game. I take Paulie.
Has no one seen the footage of you doing the McTwist over the helicopter yet? That shit proves you're the perfect skater for this tour. So no, this is not a logical continuation of the story in Thug 1. In fact, it's pretty much Jackass the game, before Jackass the game was released 3 years later. Bam Margera being the star of the show, and also some cameos from some of the Jackass crew. Wee Man,
That fish could swallow me.
and Steve-O on a mechanical bull.
Check out my mechanical bull. It's time to get totally rad on this thing. Yeah! Haha!
I had a character in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, and then you'd be Steve-O riding around on a mechanical bull through the game. I got paid $5,000, like, that's it.
I think I got the exact same thing.
Even Bam's dad Phil Margera makes an appearance here, and Bam treats him exactly how you'd expect.
Nice mask, fat boy. Don't be so loud. You'll wake the fat boy up.
As you can see, some of these cutscenes look just like Jackass footage, and they even censor the swear words like they did on Jackass. It's awesome. And it's not just the cutscenes. Playing the story mode feels like Jackass too, once you get past the usual skating parts. Let's get into it. The story mode begins with easily the best tutorial mode I've ever seen in a Tony Hawk game. If you're new to these games, the rules are made very clear to you. But if you're a veteran, you can just skip this part entirely. It's nice that you don't have to slog through these tutorials on every playthrough.
Manual through the cones.
But the best part of this tutorial is that it takes place in the iconic warehouse level from the first Tony Hawk game. But it's bigger now because Neversoft added this extra room to skate around in. 20 years later, this is still the biggest and best version of Warehouse ever. And after that, you get to travel the world completing goals. It functions similarly to the first 3 Tony Hawk games. You roam around the levels checking off goals on your list, minus the 2-minute timer. Now, sure, a lot of the goals involve some type of skating, but it won't take you long to realize that Lunacy is the main focus here. Motorized zip lines, catapults, bulls. Plus, you have the ability to destroy some of the environments, and once you do, you get new ways of skating around the levels. It doesn't change the level drastically, but it's still cool being able to switch things up. But there is one part of the destruction element that confuses me. Most of the destruction is goal-based, but in the Berlin level, the destruction you cause is not. There is nothing informing you that if you grind this part here, you'll cause all of this. As a result, I literally didn't know you could destroy Berlin until recently. It's easy to miss. It's odd. Either way, when you're not causing chaos, you're just being plain silly. How is Benjamin Franklin still alive?
I'll invent a move called the Franklin.
Why is he skateboarding? Why does no one question zombies? Or Bigfoot? You're not meant to ask those questions. It's just goofy for the sake of it, and that's it. But I like it. The vehicles are ridiculous too. They're a big step up from the vehicles in Thug 1 because they handle better, and you can perform tricks with them now. Grinds, manuals, flip tricks, and grab tricks. It's not deep, you can only perform one type of each trick, and they're pretty hard to control in tight spaces, but it is amusing. Jesse James on this scooter thingy, Steve-O on a mechanical bull, Paulie in the wheelchair, pulling off combos. It's hilarious. A race cart, a witch doctor on a tricycle, and, ready for the best sentence ever, Bigfoot on a chainsaw-powered skateboard. There's also a vehicle-style mission where you have to push a gurney around with a kid on it. And if that's not silly enough, Neversoft gave you the ability to grind with the gurney and perform a grab trick called Gurney Air. The reason why that's so funny is because you can't actually rack up a combo with the gurney like you can on skateboards and vehicles. So why can you trick with the gurney? Because Neversoft just wanted to have a laugh. They obviously knew just how stupid and glitchy this looked. And they didn't care. They were just having fun, and I appreciate that.
Wow, there is Tony Hawk. Now I feel much better. I think I'll go skate.
Plus, the cutscenes make me laugh a lot. Bam Margera, he's the best.
Hello, butt nuggets.
I bet he had so much fun being involved in this game. And Paulie, if he doesn't exemplify the game's nature, I don't know what does. I love him.
Pooper going through. Please keep your hands inside the porta potty while you take a drink, bitch!
Yeah, that was awesome.
Mi grande chorizo es el jefe, mamacita.
Next up,
Yeah,
Berlin.
that's the way I like
You
it.
just knock it out.
And Neversoft really outdid themselves with some of the chaos. The cutscenes have some major talent and budget behind them. It all looks awesome. Overall, for me personally, most of this insanity works. It's great to just let loose and be crazy. But it's easy to see how and why this wacky shit puts some fans off. The earlier games were ridiculous too, but never to this extent. It's now a full-blown cartoon with no subtlety at all. And they made that obvious in the TV ad when Bam picked bonkers before skating.
No. Nope. Mm-mm. You, get in the van.
And for a lot of players, this is all too much. It's a skateboarding game that is no longer about skateboarding. Instead, it uses skateboarding as a tool to wreak havoc and be childish. Of course that's gonna bug some fans. I have issues with it too at times. In the story, I hate the return of Thug 1's main antagonist, Eric Sparrow. He's now just a parody of himself, a cartoony beat-em-all with no talent or dignity. It was funny at the start with the chainsaw, but then he just gets on my tits. I get that Neversoft thought that this would be cathartic after he annoyed us in Thug 1, but ironically, this made him twice as annoying. I mean, we got our catharsis when we literally beat him at the end of Thug 1. Now we're just kicking him when he's down. Plus, he was a talented skater. What happened to him, man?
Dude, you suck anymore.
But playing the game can be flat out juvenile at times. One mission has you setting pedestrians' heads on fire by farting on them. Not exactly intelligent comedy, nor game design. Another goal is to attack pedestrians with tomatoes. So you get the tomatoes and... What the fuck? But either way, the story mode is mostly satisfying. It's sadly way too short, only 5 or so hours long, but it's still very funny, and mostly fun to complete. Now, you may have noticed that I've barely talked about the skateboarding, and that's because there's not much to mention here. Skating in Thug 2 is pretty much identical to how it was in Thug 1, which is a great thing. The wall plant has now been replaced with this similar trick called the sticker slap. It's odd, but everything else from Thug 1 has pretty much been copied and pasted here. But you do get some new features here. Focus mode lets you slow down time. It looks cool and helps you last longer at a big combo. A great new addition. And you now have the ability to flip and roll as you perform grab tricks. It's simple, but oh so satisfying to pull off during the big combos. The rest of the new tricks and skating features aren't as impressive. The Nata spin is okay. It's pretty amusing doing it on the heads of moped riders. But there's still not much to this trick. The new freak out feature is... well, it lets you smash up your board after bailing, then you can get some points. but I don't like it much. I get that it adds to the destructive nature of the game, and it makes bailing useful, but you don't get that many points for your efforts, and it just means it takes you longer to get back on your board after bailing. I seldom use it. You can also spray paint on the walls now. It is cool how every skater has their own tag, and you can actually design your own tag, but leaving your mark just, who cares? Plus the new brake feature it's okay. So most of the new skating features aren't that impressive, but the new focus mode and ability to flip and roll definitely makes the trick system a little better than it was in Thug 1. So you'd imagine that skating would be better in this game, right? Well, in my opinion, no, because of the levels. My biggest problem with Underground 2 is that most of its original levels disappoint me. I like how each one feels different from the last, and again, I also appreciate how you can slightly edit them with destruction. Plus, this is the first Tony Hawk game with a day to night cycle. It's pretty cool seeing these maps change over time. I really like this. But it still doesn't take me long to get bored of these levels. I wasn't the biggest fan of them back in the day, but now, man, they do not hold up. Most of them feel bloody small compared to the earlier games. By this point, Neversoft had upped their game with their level sizes, so playing Thug 2 after Thug 1 is night and day. The reason for their small size may be due to the fact that Neversoft released this game only a year after Thug 1. But Thug 1 came out just 1 year after Pro Skater 4, and its levels were mostly impressive, so I have no clue what happened here. Now, of course, size isn't everything. Some of the earlier games levels, like New Jersey, weren't that big, but it didn't need to be massive because their level design was impeccable. Here, the way the rails and ramps are positioned feels kind of basic to me. Now, is the trick system still phenomenal? Of course, but because the levels just don't complement it as well as they should, the skating feels kind of held back to me. For example, do you remember sketching vehicles in Thug 1? It was awesome. It was a cool way of traversing the larger maps quicker and just getting some nice speed to pull off stunts. But now, sketching vehicles is flat out terrible, and it's entirely down to the level design. You'll mostly just get taken out of bounds in about 10 seconds, or if you sketch in the Boston level, you'll get dizzy going around in a tiny circle. Now, sure, sketching in some of Thug 1's levels only took you in small circles, but those levels were still incredible, so I felt like I could do a lot with the speed I gained. I don't feel that way about Boston because Boston bores me, and it's not just the sketching. All of the tricks feel held back to me thanks to the way the levels are designed. Now, of course, if you love these levels, then you probably love this game too. More power to you. I'm happy for you. I just wish I could get on board with you guys. But I will admit, it's not all bad news. As cramped as the New Orleans level can be, it does have some fun, quirky rooftop lines. And the Barcelona level actually has some great size to it. It has some brilliant lines and it gives me a great sense of freedom. But best yet is Skatopia. Oh, I love this level. It's not big, but it is fun. It has some fantastic lines, it looks real pretty, it's full of character with that mental redneck charm, and sketching the car actually feels useful because it gets you up the hill quicker. This is a sandbox, truly a great little level to end the story mode with. Now, after you beat the game, you get a load of unlockable content. Some of it is cool, some of it is not. You get to unlock these 2 levels, and oh boy, they also piss me off. To me, the Pro Skater level is just terrible. You start out in a spaceship surrounded by aliens, and then you perform these tedious tasks to open up wormholes to a Mayan temple, and then hell. Then you get to unlock this room where you meet Satan. click the circle button and... not exactly worth all of that effort. This level feels cramped, it's awkward to navigate, the lines aren't interesting, and it's a big pain in the ass to unlock some of the other areas. I hate this level. There's another level you can unlock after you complete the classic mode, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's called Triangle. It's an island full of random crap. Planes flying through wormholes in the sky, pirates, aliens. It's just arbitrary. I don't like skating around here much, the lines aren't that fun, it just is. To me, these last two unlockable levels exemplify Neversoft's mindset when developing the game. They put more emphasis on the wacky shit than intricate level design. Ugh. But the rest of the unlockables are cool. In typical Tony Hawk's fashion, you unlock some really weird characters to play as. My favourites are Paulie without the wheelchair. Just amazing. The hand? I got no thoughts. But my all-time favourite? Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. But the most unexpected character you can unlock is Nick Kang from True Crime Streets of LA. I didn't know he was in this game until recently because he was only available in the American version of Thug 2. And it's really disappointing because back in the day, I freaking loved True Crime Streets of LA. This would have been jiggy as fuck to play, but there we go. Yeah, well. And as per usual, you get a slew of online and creator modes for you to dabble in. Always good stuff. Also, in my epic review of Thug 1, there was a chapter dedicated to the Gold Creator mode and how it helped me discover myself and got me through some bleak times. So you can bet your butt that I spent months playing around with Thug 2's Gold Creator mode. It was a great time for me. But Thug 2 brought an entirely new mode to the table, the Classic mode. The Classic mode does exactly what it says on the tin. It plays just like the first 3 classic Tony Hawk games. You get a series of goals to complete in a 2-minute window. What I love the most about the Classic mode is that it brings back a compilation of levels from the older games. That's a win-win. If you don't know these levels, you've got a load of new maps to play around in. It's great. And if you do know them, you'll have a blast returning to them but with updated graphics and new abilities. The back of the case describes Thug 2 as being 2 games in 1 thanks to the Classic mode. I would agree with that if it wasn't for one big downside. About half of the Classic mode's levels are just the same ones from Thug 2's Story mode, and considering that the Story mode already played like the classic games, it just kind of feels recycled and monotonous. Plus, as I said, I don't like the triangle level that you unlock at the end of the Classic mode, so it does kind of feel like a big middle finger for all of my efforts. Still, Classic mode is a very welcome addition indeed, and I was very happy to see it return in the next Tony Hawk game. So, in the end, Tony Hawk's Underground 2 still holds up after 20 years. It combines everything fans love about the franchise and wraps it all up in a big ball of obnoxious fun. It might get a bit too obnoxious at times and it doesn't add much to the formula, but it still works. The story mode is solid, the skating still feels great, and there's plenty to keep you going after the game is over. The new Classic mode is very welcome. It also has yet another badass soundtrack. My favourites are Interested in Madness by Operatic, That's Why They Call It a Union by Less Than Jake, and Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. This game got me into that classic. There's a lot to love about Thug 2. But I just can't hold it in high regard because most of the levels are just okay, and it doesn't bring much new to the table. Underground 2 feels more like an expansion pack or DLC than a full-fledged game. There's just not enough here to make it all that fresh. But what I didn't know was, Neversoft would continue to struggle to keep things fresh all the way until the franchise's death. In fact, I'd say that struggle is what actually killed the Tony Hawk franchise. And even though that's not Thug 2's fault, I still kinda see Thug 2 as a bad omen, because I can see the first signs of that fate all over this game. But I'll elaborate on that in my review of Tony Hawk's American Wasteland next year when it turns 20. Either way, Thug 2 is solid, and that's evident in the fanbase. Plenty do consider this to be the best Tony Hawk game ever, and I can understand why. It's very entertaining and I'll always enjoy it. I just can't love it like I used to. God damn, the red pill sucks. I'm gonna give Tony Hawk's Underground 2 a 7 out of 10. This time next year, I'll be reviewing Tony Hawk's American Wasteland for its 20th anniversary. And that will be the end of me reviewing these Tony Hawk games for a while. I'll explain why in that video, because oh, it's gonna burn reopening those old wounds. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay jiggy. The Badger appreciates you.